Father Simon and his penitent pals. Having enjoyed your confessions for many years in the safe knowledge that I had nothing to confess myself, I was suddenly reminded of an incident in the late 80s for which I might actually need some forgiveness. Myself and the then current Mrs. I were a few months into our second marital home, and I had spent the summer landscaping and levelling the back garden. I happily did the hard graft, while my green-fingered wife was in charge of replenishing the borders. One late summer evening, darkness fell, and I shone my torch along the first level of lawn to see what Winston the cat was up to. As there'd been a lovely heavy shower, he was interested in the many snails that had suddenly appeared and started to migrate across the lawn, something I now know they're prone to do after warm rain at night. My torch beam picked up what seemed like hundreds of the little critters, all heading for my wife's delicate, soft-leaved shrubs. Now, my wife did not suffer fools gladly, and whenever something was not perfect, someone was always to blame. Quite often it turned out to be me, says Mr. Ive. Fearing that her beloved new plants would be stripped to shreds and that I would be blamed, I left my torch on at ground level, grabbed a bucket, and proceeded to collect all the snails before they could get me into trouble. It was a big bucket, but it was soon full of these ghastly gastropods, and I felt pleased with my 20 minutes' work. My satisfaction was short-lived, because I now had to deal with the pests, and it's at times like these that you wonder what Alan Titchmarsh would have done. Anyway, could I let them loose in next door's garden? Not very neighbourly, and besides, they might make their way back over the fence, or under it, and then I'd be back to square one. Boiling water? Well, allegedly humane, but I couldn't bring myself to do that.
Allegedly? How?
What? No, obviously that's a bad thing. No, the only solution apparently open to me was to flush them down the newly installed toilet, built attached to the kitchen extension. What could possibly go wrong? It took a few flushes, but they were soon on their way, and I hoped that they would end up somewhere where they could slither out and munch on wild plants in the countryside. Bobby has her head in her hands, by the way. I got myself a well-earned cold beer from the fridge and went to see what the first Mrs. I was watching on TV. Looking back, it's a shame that my cold beer didn't cause me to go to the toilet earlier than my wife, because about 45 seconds after she had left the lounge, not only did I hear her blood-curdling screams, but so too did most of the street. It turned out that about 10 or so of the toughest snails in the neighbourhood were making a run for it, well, as best they could, up the bowl of the toilet and towards my wife's bottom. But the situation was made worse because my wife hadn't noticed them until she was packing up, as we say. Using language that had scarcely been heard since the Angles and Saxons got together, and at a very impressive volume, I was summoned by my wife to rectify the situation, if you like. I admired the resilience of this troop, and so I removed them from the area of the Blue Lake and released them into the garden to take their chances with the slug pellets. So clearly, says Mr. I need forgiveness from the first Mrs. I, who didn't use that toilet for a week and always checked first for a long, long time after that. Forgiveness from the snails who never made it back up, although I hope they did survive their aquatic adventure and lived happily ever after on some distant shore. And from the neighbours who might have thought that some kind of murder was going on next door. Any chance of forgiveness? I meant well, says Mr. Riley. Let me tell you, Mr. I, I'm looking at expressions in the studio which would suggest that the answer is a big fat no. Anyway, we'll check in with Joe first of all.
Oh, that was a great case when the penny dropped and all of a sudden Bobby and I were looking at each other and I was like, oh, they came up the toilet bowl slithering their way. A slimy gastropodish way. I'm going to forgive Mr. I, actually, because as a gardener, snails and slugs, they are really annoying and they do eat your flowers and your leaves, and they shouldn't, even though they want to nourish themselves, obviously. So I thought it was very gallant of him to go out there and to pick them up off the lawn. Nobody would do that, really, unless he really, really loved his wife.
He was trying to impress the former Mrs. I.
Yeah. That didn't go so well, did it? I think he was very gallant. He was just very, very, very stupid. Why you would think to put snails down a toilet with their shells, as if that's ever going to work. But I will forgive him just because he was trying to do a good thing. He was just a bit dim.
Yes, he was. I'm not. Yes, well, I'm sure we'll find out what the right thing is to do. Probably just leave them there. Just let them feed? I don't know. Bobby's looking very hardcore now.
I don't know really how to protect plants from snails. I mean, we all suffer for it. You lose
Beer
many.
traps.
Well, the thing is, though, that you wanted to do the right thing, but you didn't really want to do the right thing, Mr. I. You just wanted to save yourself and your wife, really. It was self-interest all the way. It wasn't in the interest of anybody but yourself, really. And also, there's plenty of places to put snails. You go and walk up the road and put them on the verge. I doubt that they'll walk all the way back. I don't know that. Maybe I'm wrong and somebody will tell me. But you did have choices. And the toilet wasn't the best choice. I can't think by any stretch of the imagination. The fact that 10 of them survived the S-bend is a miracle. They're now still in the drainage unit, probably. You know, in your big drains, they probably climbed up the walls and trying to find their way out. They're pretty good. I mean, they're robust, but not for an S-bend, probably. You are not forgiven, Mr. I. And also, no wonder there was a second Mrs. I.
Was it third? I'm not.
Third.
How many? I wonder how many he's had.
How many survived you? You are not forgiven.
This is from Hannah, a baby Lily in Cornwall. Hi, Hannah and Lily. Snails will travel 2 miles to get home. How they had homes.
Really?
2 miles, yeah. Also, says Hannah, guess how many teeth snails have? 4,000.
Did we ever get any verification of that? Or were they just made up? Guess what? Snails have wings and can speak, and they've got teeth.
I like to believe they have 4,000 teeth because they can get through a leaf pretty quickly, so I think that could be true.
Last night I found a snail on the side of the bath, and I thought, how on earth did you get on the outside? How on earth did you get in the place?
Came up the toilet.
No, he couldn't have done it. He must have climbed stairs and come in the door. There is no way into our place.
What did you do with it?
I picked it up and took it out into the woods. But I was thinking, where's his home then? If it's going to take 2 miles to get home, where's his home?
Maybe just set him back, like quite a distance. Took all that time to get there. It was nearly home, and then all of a sudden you pick him up and take him away again.
What was he doing in my bathroom?
Isn't the answer to your question, Bobby? He carries his home with him.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's on his back. So wherever he lays his
shell,
there's his home, as Paul Young once sang.